Welcome to the Young Turks. We got a full show ahead for you guys. In the third hour, we're going to do two stories that are just stomach churning. I'm giving you way advanced warning, okay? On the other hand, you're not going to be able to look away, and then you're going to look away and not look away. One's very important, the other one is not so important, but those are some crazy videos we got coming up for you in the third hour. I'm just letting you know, okay? And then the great Oral Roberts has passed. So obviously we're going to have to make fun. No, we're terrible people. I'm a bad man. We're just going to go to some Oral Roberts classics. That's all. Okay, and of course we feel bad for his family. He was 91, lived a full life. We'll get back to that story in the third hour. And then today, I tell you, look, there's a lot of things that are predictable in today's show. But nonetheless, very interesting, don't get me wrong. But an unlikely hero on today's show. An unlikely hero. And it's got me a little jazzed. Gave me a little bit of hope, okay? Who is it? Who could it be? We're going to find out a little later in the program. Oh, I'm such a merciless tease. I thought I was merciful. What happened? All right, so now, let's do it. You know what we're going to start with. Healthcare reform, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, what's the latest on today? The cave-in, the buckle, the collapse is complete. Utter and complete collapse by the progressives. So Obama goes and talks to the Senate Democrats, and I saw a headline in the Associated Press this morning that said, Obama goes to pressure the senators. And I was like, oh, yeah, I was like, I guarantee I play this little game with myself, okay? Where I say, all right, I wonder which way this article is going to go based on the headline. I was like, is there any chance in the world that he went and pressured the conservative Democrats to get on board with a public option or a Medicare buy-in or just about anything that we asked for? It's like, I put that at near 0% chance. Instead, he's going to go pressure the progressive Democrats. Buck it on to Lieberman. Lieberman's got it right. Shut up, right? And, of course, that's exactly what happened. I won, again, in my own mind. You read the article, and, yeah, Obama went and yelled at the liberals, how dare you? Sit down. Bow your head. No, corporate America wins again. So no public option, no Medicare buy-in. Then you go to Senator Dick Durbin, one of the progressives, number 2 guy in the Senate. Okay, so what's happening with the progressives? He says, yeah, that's over. In essence, we lost. So wrap it up. I know public. Look, you know what? There's not even a trigger anymore. Do you know that? I mean, like, the trigger was like the pathetic concession at the end, like, oh, you knew it was going to be the trigger and it was going to be pathetic and ridiculous. Now they don't even have the trigger as far as I can see. They don't have anything. So, all right, now, profiles and courage. These guys are, look, okay, so should we vote against this thing? Now, look, I'm going to give you Lieberman and what a ridiculous person he is and his unbelievable hypocrisy in a second, right? But do we vote against it, right? Now, I take this stuff really seriously. It's not like I'm in the Senate or in the House, but like I want to give real advice. Because it's easy as a talk show host to be like, oh, no, vote against it, blah, blah, kill it, blah, 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 right? Very easy because you don't make the actual vote. You don't have that responsibility. But I take it seriously. Like, what would I really do if I was in the House or the Senate? And look, on the one side, you have really smart guys like Jonathan Alter from Newsweek, and don't give me this stuff about mainstream media, la la la. Believe me, I know what the mainstream media is about. He's a real progressive, and he really cares about this issue. And he says, and I asked him today over email about cost containment, and he says, look, we've got some bundling, we got the exchanges, and then hopefully we're going to eventually this thing changes the way that that Medicare might price things instead of based on, hey, you did X, so I give you this dollar amount, which encourages them to do 2X and 3X and 4X. They might pay based on performance. Now, that would be very positive. That would be some sort of cost containment. So he's on that side. And then you got, look, Feingold and Sanders today, crickets, right? They haven't really objected. So, yeah, I'm sure they hate it and they feel butthurt over it. And that's what they're all saying, Durbin and White House and all. Oh, wow, ouch, that hurt. Joe, come on, I didn't think you were that big. And but then they turn around and they say, yeah, they're going to vote for it. So obviously there's something good in the bill that despite this, these terrible concessions, they still haven't lost Feingold and Sanders and Sherrod Brown, right? So it's not, I don't want it to be seen like it's cut and dry and it's super easy, right? On the other hand, we got such massive issues. Number one, everybody says, Cenk, you don't understand. But in the end, we're finally going to have universal health care. But stop and think about that for a second. What does that mean? So there's a mandate in there, and so everybody's going to be covered because they're forced to pay for insurance. So what's the great side of that? Now, I get it, some people get subsidies, right? But so, okay, that's basically welfare health care, right? Medicare, Medicaid, and et cetera, and that gets increased. That obviously has some good sides, and for the people who are poor and can't afford it, et cetera, that those numbers moved up a little bit. Don't think that there isn't an upside there. But on the other hand, for most of us, okay, so you're making me buy insurance. Woohoo, there's universal health care. I mean, so there's universal auto insurance. Everybody has to buy auto insurance before they can drive a car. Why is that such a great thing? I mean, I get why you want to do it, but it's not like, oh, well, you're not going to believe what we accomplished. We got all Americans to pay private insurance for some insurance. And, again, look, I might be missing something, but so I'm not that impressed by that universal coverage that they're talking about. It doesn't even cover all Americans. So, okay, so you got that side. And then, look, as I explained to you, having Medicare not based on services but based on performance is very important. But this whole thing begins somewhere in like the next century, 2014 or something, and then they do a commission to figure out if it's the right way to go, and that takes a couple of years. And at the end of that commission, if they come to the right conclusion, then they might begin to switch Medicare over. But we're literally talking about 8-10 years from now, right? And that's just for Medicare. So how about our premiums? So the whole time our premiums, they're not affected by the fee, the service versus performance switch at best until, I mean, literally decades later. Then it goes from Medicare to possibly into insurance. And so when do our premiums go down? Could the exchanges work? Maybe they could. And maybe, look, after all this, they passed the goddamn thing anyway, right? Or the lovely thing. And then it turns out that, we were wrong about worrying so much, and that it's terrific and everybody's covered and they got rid of pre-existing conditions and rescission, et cetera, and we feel more safe and secure that we actually have health insurance, and somehow those cost containment things that we can't see but Obama claims is absolutely positively there wind up working. And then I come back and tell you 3 years from now, I will. Hey, you know what? Look, there's a lot to be learned from that because it turns out, yes, it was an incremental approach. It didn't look great in the beginning, but in the end it wound up working. I would love to tell you that story. But as things stand now, I can't see it. So I'm not pounding the gavel, it's not over. But, if I had to vote today and I was in the House or the Senate, I'd vote no. Because there's a second part of it too. So first, there's three parts actually. One, I'm not convinced that it's great, right? For the reasons that I just laid out. Number two, there's the issue of precedent. I mean, look, if they know you're bluffing, and they know that no matter what you do, they're always going to get the liberal or progressive vote, and that the only concessions they ever have to make is to conservatives and to people like Joe Lieberman, well, they're going to steamroll you on every single thing. They know you're bluffing. They know you're full of crap. So when you say, I'm going to vote no, and then you vote yes, you tell Obama and the lobbyists and Rahm Emanuel and everybody else, I don't know, ignore what the liberals say, ignore what the progressives say. They don't mean it. In the end, what are they going to do, vote no? They're not going to vote no. They're going to vote yes. So don't worry about it and just run over them. That's a terrible precedent. I don't want to set that precedent. And, so is it going to work? Is it going to set a bad precedent? Are we still going to have out-of-control costs and premiums? Why am I voting for it? Somebody could come on here and change my mind. I'd love to have a discussion with somebody, on both sides. But right now, it looks like a no for me. Okay. Now, John Aravos made a great point. Partly because, sometimes I get a novel new point. I go, oh, well, look, I hadn't considered this. This is interesting. And sometimes I get excited because somebody else is saying what I've been saying for a long time. This goes in that category. Arabosis runs America Blog, one of the largest progressive blogs in the country, and he said, look, please stop talking to me about the numbers. Oh, we don't have enough senators. I mean, all right, so you say, look, we don't really have 60 senators, we only have 59 because Lieberman won't vote with us under any circumstance, right? And I agree with that. I said that yesterday. Just count him out. He's a Republican. Just move on, right? He says, oh, well, we can't do it with 59 is the excuse that people get. He's like, let's go over the record again of what Bush got accomplished and how many senators he had, okay? John Ashcroft nomination, which was incredibly controversial. He got it done. Iraq war resolution. Iraq funding resolutions over and over again over the years. The largest tax cuts in American history in 2001 and 2003. The Patriot Act. Justice Alito, Justice Roberts, Medicare Part D, and the list goes on and on. They got almost every single thing they wanted on their agenda, with the notable exception that they couldn't privatize Social Security. That's the one they lost on, okay? They got almost everything else. How many senators did they have? At their height, they had 55 senators. But for most of this time, 2001 through 2005, when he got almost all of this passed, you know how many senators they had? 50 or 51. That's it. And did you see Bush and Cheney coming out and going, I don't have enough senators. No, some of the Republicans are going to go the other way. They would turn to the Republicans and say, oh, you're thinking of voting against us. How would you like a broken back? Because what we're going to do is we're going to crush you politically. We're going to come and unload on you. We're going to run a primary opponent. We're going to make your life a living hell. You're going to get in line, bitch, okay? And every single Republican did it. No exceptions on 98% of the cases, especially the major ones, right? From time to time, they'd lose somebody on a minor issue, right? But then they'd go pick up Democrats. Then you go to the Democrats, they'd be like, oh, we are popular. We are patriotic. Bow your head. And the Democrats like Nelson and Lieberman would, bow their head, or they'd be enthusiastic about it, and they'd join them. They got everything on their agenda passed. So now, if they got everything passed with, at times, 50 senators, that's it. And the Democrats and Obama can't get anything passed, that's not fair. He got stimulus funding passed, and he gets all of his conservative agenda passed. But can't get a progressive agenda passed with 60 senators, well then, how can you argue that that's not weak leadership? There's only one argument to say that that's not really like sad in its, I don't want to keep using the word pathetic, I know it's strong, but sad in its inability to lead, right? There's only one argument to say that it's not just weakness. It's that Obama is, part of also a wholly owned subsidiary of corporate America, and that everything's a ruse around him. And yeah, he wants some incremental change, but he keeps the system as it is. Private insurance, in this case, in this issue, runs everything, and everybody else shuts up, and there's no public option, there's no government, there's no nothing, there's no controlling premiums, none of that crap. Okay, and the financial reform side, no way, man, you crazy? As I'm about to tell you in a later story, Republicans are outflanking Obama on his left, on financial reform. It's Barack, corporate America, Obama. So it's both, though. It is weakness, and it is that he wants to appease corporate America. Those things are true. Look, I wish they weren't true. I keep looking through the stories. I'm like, wait, show me something where I can, I can pinpoint and say, well, look at that. You see that? No, he fought, and that's standing up for the little guy. 9 out of 10 times, I don't see it, right? So how are you going to argue with Arabosis? He's right. They got everything passed with 10 less senators. Only two possible conclusions. They don't want to pass these bills, the strong reform bills, or they're a sad little party, and they come crying about their weakness, and we're supposed to sympathize with them. Oh, I'm sorry you don't have 65 or 70 or 75 senators. And if we gave them to you, Arabosis says that I say the same thing. You're not going to pass it even if we gave you 75 senators. I can give you 95 senators and you wouldn't pass a goddamn thing. That was actually progressive. Okay? So, but you don't understand. I have 35 senators who are with Joe Lieberman. You got to, look, I'll tell you what, with Cheney and Rove and Bush, there's one thing you had to respect, which is they fought, man. They got in there with their stupid cowboy boots. and whatever, and Cheney from his underground bunker, and they said, look, here's our agenda, and I'm going to get the congressmen and the senators to open up their throats. Okay, I'm going to be polite here. And I'm going to shove it down their throats, and at the end, it's going to be sticking out of their throats like this, right? And they'll be like, okay, yeah, largest tax cuts, yeah, Iraq War, Patriot Act, what do you need? Okay, we're like, hey, can we get a public option by? No, shut up. So, can you tell I'm a little frustrated? But how can I not be frustrated? We're going to get the financial reform later. All right. Look, when we come back, we're going to do Lieberman, and it's going to drive you nuts. Okay, but we do have an unlikely hero coming up, and we do have fun stories too. A Republican official in Arizona turns out to be a stalker. What he used to stalk the girls is ridiculous. A brothel owner decides, or a brothel lobbyist, this is great stuff, is worried about how some whores are too sinful. It's a great show. Come back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Before we get to Lieberman, quick note on what do other progressives think, right? So I told you, Feingold and Sanders we haven't really heard from. They're hiding in Cheney's underground bunker. Sanders today pushed a single-payer bill. Okay, it didn't get any votes. I mean, he got some votes, but not even close, of course. But, I mean, how are you going to vote on the real thing? I'm going to come back to single-payer in a second. But Howard Dean came out and said, kill the bill. Counterproductive, not going to help us. It's going to hurt us. And there's going to be a huge political price to pay when the premiums don't go down. And in the end, it's a corporate giveaway. In the end, the corporations are going to love this bill. Private insurance gets all of these new customers, and so does pharma. Pharmaceutical companies are going to get more customers subsidized by the United States government, hospitals, doctors, etc. Everybody wins but us. So he says kill it, and all across the liberal blogosphere, they're screaming, kill it, kill it! As I said before, I'm not 100% there yet, but I'm damn close. I'm still open to argument on it, but that window's closing. All right, now, quickly, before we go to Lieberman, on single payer. An ironic thing happened in this healthcare reform debate. I started out a moderate. I wasn't for single payer in the beginning. And in fact, to this moment, I haven't said I'm for a single payer. I was for the public option because I thought, hey, good, let's see what works better. Let's have the private insurance option. Let's have the public option. And I'm not positive the public option is going to work. And if private insurance is better, then we'll have settled the debate. And I earnestly believe that. I now have gotten pushed more and more to the left during the debate because of how the debate unfolded. And not because of my personal feelings like Lieberman, but because of the facts. And I'll explain what that is in a second. And now it's official. I'd like to declare it. I'm now for a single-payer system. There, I just declared it. Switch over. Now, why? Because, look, I was thinking, all right, well, maybe the public option will be less expensive now, but there is no public option, right? And how did the public option get killed? Because of private insurance. They have so much money to spend on lobbyists that they bought all of Congress. Now, I've seen the premiums go up. We saw in the last 10 years they went up 119%. And then whether it's the pharmaceutical companies that raise their prices by 9% this year, whether it's every single kind of healthcare company that continues to raise their prices, including this year, and they'll do it again next year and the year after, you realize that the system has been captured by the healthcare companies. And of course, in a capitalist system, their motivation is to make money. Now, how do you make money? You charge people more, that's us, and you give them less, that's us. Okay. Now, well, you can say, hey, look, it does not apply to everything in capitalism, and I claim to be a diehard capitalist. Well, let's think this through real quick, right? Now, for example, Doritos. Let's just take them as a random example. People will argue, whether it's Doritos or Fritos or whoever else, hey, every year it seems like the chips are getting smaller and smaller, and when you open up the bag, there's less and less chips in there. You see that just like the healthcare companies. They're giving you less every year because they want to make more profit, and sometimes they increase their prices from $1.99 to $2.99, okay? Sometimes. So now, what are the differences, right? Because I don't mind if they do that with Doritos, because one, there's tremendous competition in the junk food market, If the Doritos is charging me too much, I'll go to Fritos or I'll go to Lay's or I'll go to Ruffles, right? In the healthcare situation, because of state regulations, et cetera, there's very little competition in many states, so the prices are artificially high. Second of all, if I get a smaller chip, I'm a little annoyed. If I get less insurance coverage, I die. So it's a little different, you see? And if I am charged an extra buck on the Doritos, maybe I get it, maybe I don't, but I get it. That's capitalism, and I got no problems with it. If Nike charges me 20 bucks more for a shoe, maybe I go to Reebok, maybe I don't. But I'm alive either way, okay? Now, if my health insurance company charges me too much and I can't afford the insurance, or they just deny me, well, then I'm dead. So this isn't like Doritos. This isn't like Nike. This is about life and death. That's why I keep going back to the fire department example and the police department example. We don't have private fire insurance because we can't ask people before going into a fire, hey, do you have it? How much did you pay? What were your premiums? You can't do it, right? So in the end, I think these private companies, because of the way that the system is set up, obviously will try to squeeze more and more money out of you forever and give you less and less services, which means some of us die because they denied us care. I mean, that's a sword of Damocles hanging over our head. And the whole time you're like, oh my God, am I going to be covered? Am I going to be covered? And you're constantly worried about that and constantly worried about that you can't pay the insurance anymore. And then you look at a system like Canada. The Republicans go crazy. Oh, Canada, terrible, right? Are you kidding me? I get emails every day from our Canadian listeners. They're like, you know that in Canada, you're definitely covered, and you know you go into you can see any doctor you like, and you go into a hospital or a doctor with your card, and you just give you the card, and that's it. You're set. As I think about that, I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so good. That sounds like Valhalla. That sounds like Nirvana. It's Xanadu over there. Now, are there downsides? Yes. Sometimes there's lines. Way overblown and overhyped, right? And you have to pay through it somehow, so you pay through it through higher taxes. So if you say to me, okay, do you want the Canadian system, single payer, get rid of all this panic and this worry and the rising premiums and you can't pay for insurance, get rid of all those problems, but in return you have to have higher taxes. Yeah. What do you need, 5%, 10%? I'm willing to go to 10% of my income. Maybe I can go higher because, look, these costs are killing us. So in the end, do I want single payer? Given what I've seen now, and given that these private insurance guys are never going to let go of their grip of the politicians that reform the system on their own, yeah, I'm done, man. Single payer. Sign me up. Now, you know, if I had it my way, we scratch this whole thing. If I had it my way, we'd have elected a strong Democrat or progressive to, crack some heads. But we didn't get that. We got a guy who promises change and then, gave us this much change. So I don't know. Single player looks hopeless because Sanders has, tried it. And what did he get? 3 votes today? I don't know. I'll have to check in on it for you. Okay, maybe he got 7 votes. I don't know. So let's go to the scumbag Joe Lieberman. Now, Joe Lieberman says, oh, look, I can't do Medicare buy-in. It's just against my conscience, always about his conscience, against his principles. I can't have it. Well, that's interesting because, he was for it in the 2000 election, right? He ran saying, yeah, Medicare buy-in, that's the way to go. You say, well, that's a long time ago. Situations changed. It could. That's right. Now, he said that he was for it again in 2006 when he was running for Senate, deceiving the voters. But you say, the 2006, that's still 3 years ago. Well, how about 3 months ago? 3 months ago, Joe Lieberman says, hey, wouldn't a Medicare buy-in be fantastic? You don't believe me? Let's watch Joe Lieberman. You're going to see him today. You're going to see him 3 months ago. Watch.
But we've got to stop adding to the bill. We've got to start subtracting some controversial things. I think the only way to get this done before Christmas is to bring in some Republicans who are open-minded on this, like Olympia Snowe. I'll tell you...
Well, what do you have to do that?
You got to take out the Medicare buy-in. You got to forget about the public option. You probably have to take out the Class Act, which is a whole new entitlement program.
Now, give me the list of things that have to be taken out to pass it.
Well, from my point of view, no public option, no Medicare buy-in, no Medicare buy-in, no Medicare buy-in, No Medicare buy-in.
First question came from somebody named Jeff Coulis in Avon. When you first ran for president in 2004 and Senate in 2006, you supported a public option choice for health care by expanding MediChoice. Why do you now, in 2009, oppose a public option after so long supporting it?
Yeah. I didn't really support a public option in the way that it's being recommended now. In other words, what's being recommended now is a separate new government-run health insurance plan. What I supported then, and thanks for mentioning this, because it points out that for some period of years I've been concerned about healthcare reform, been devoted to doing something about healthcare reform and trying to figure out how to best cover with insurance people who are uncovered. So what I did, and here's the difference, my proposals were to basically expand the existing successful public health insurance programs, Medicare and Medicaid. In the case of Medicaid, to allow people who were above the eligibility level to buy into the Medicaid system on the theory that it would be up to a certain income limit, and the theory that they would be able to buy into it at less than the market rate of health insurance. When it came to Medicare, I was very focused on a group post-50, maybe more like post-55, people who have retired early or unfortunately been laid off early, who lose their health insurance and they're too young to qualify for Medicare. And what I was proposing was that they have an option to buy into Medicare early, and again on the premise that that would be less expensive.
An option to buy in to Medicare 3 months ago. So they say, all right, Joe, you win. We'll kill the public option. We'll give you the option to buy into Medicare just like you wanted. And he said maybe as early as 50 years old. No, but we'll start it at 55. And he says, nope, don't want to do it. What happened? He hates the liberals. There's two things here at play. One is that he hates the liberals, and he's honest about it. He says it, right? And they said, what changed your mind between September and December? He said, well, you know, when we talked about Medicare buy-in, a bunch of people like Congressman Weiner said that they liked it, and so that kind of turned me off to it. And he said the guy who came up with the public option, Yale professor Jacob Hacker, said it was a great idea and a good thing. So I took my idea and I flushed it down the toilet because then it looked like liberals were in favor of it. He hates liberals for what happened in 2006. He's never going to let it go. He's going to say no to everything, okay? Now, point number two is, and Ezra Klein has talked about this, Jonathan Alter has talked about this, everybody gets it. It's super obvious, okay? It's a personal thing for him. You don't get health care? He doesn't give a damn. You pay higher premiums? He doesn't care. He's covered by Congress. You go deal with your own problems. He's got personal vendettas to deal with. And then the second thing is what the press never talks about. He gets a tremendous amount of money from insurance companies that are based in Connecticut, okay? So he's going to say no to everything because they told him, his corporate overlords told him, and they said, oh, try Medicare buy-in, you know? Just make sure you kill the public option. So he did that, and then like, all right, Medicare buy-in, corporate overlords, what do you think? Oh, kill that too? All right, well, I'm against that too, forget it. All right, now look, you want more inconsistency? They put together a video of Lieberman on the filibuster back in 1995, and we've given you long quotes about that before, where he says, I'll tell you what, I am definitely for getting rid of the filibuster. It's stalling everything in Congress. I don't have to tell you. You're going to see the video in a second. And then today, where he says, well, of course I have to filibuster. It's very, very important. All right, let's go to clip number 4. An obstacle to accomplishment.
Filibuster created gridlock. It's not the way to run the greatest deliberative body in the world. I'm not going to support an end to a filibuster to try to stop this bill because the whole process of individual senators being able to hold up legislation is just unfair. I would use the power I have as a single senator to stop a final vote. The filibuster has become not only in reality an obstacle to accomplishment here, but it is also a symbol of a lot that ails Washington.
Would you filibuster it? Would you actually stand on the floor and read from the phone
I'm sure I
book?
won't be alone, but but I'd be prepared to.
See, no matter what you say, he's going to say the opposite. Before, he's in favor of the filibuster. Now he's against it. Or he was against it. Now he's for it. It's hard to keep up with Joe. We have an old school clip of his that we're going to show you in a second here that gives you a sense of his personal ideology. But, you know, on Medicare buy-in, before he's for it, now he's against it. Can you have that old school clip, Jesus? Well, let's show you. This is Joe Lieberman even before 1995. Watch.
I don't know what they have to say. It makes no difference anyway. Whatever it is, I'm against it. No matter what it is or who commenced it, I'm against it. Your proposition may be good, but let's have one thing understood. Whatever it is, I am against it. And even when you've changed it or condensed it, I'm against it. I'm opposed to it. On general principles, I'm opposed to it. He's opposed to it. In fact, he's opposed to it. For months before my son was born, I used to yell from night till morn, whatever it is, I'm against it. And I've kept yelling since I first commenced it. I'm against it.
And you get a sense of Joe Lieberman. Because the corporate guys have told him, whatever it is, just kill it, okay? The only thing we want is to take, and that's what Joe, if you notice in every press conference, the one thing Joe Lieberman is in favor of is, he says, well, what, we're giving insurance to 30 million new Americans. Why? Because those 30 million new Americans are going to get put right in the private insurance's lap, and they're going to take more and more money from those guys. So like, yeah, that we're in favor of. Anything that contains costs, i.e. our profits, we're against it. And that's why you have Joe Lieberman as you do. Now, that's the reality. Do you see that in the media? No. Okay, now, Ann Kornblut from Washington Post and Howard Fine from Newsweek are on Chris Matthews' program, Hardball. They're going to have an interesting conversation on Lieberman. Now, to be fair to them, earlier in this segment, they talked about how Joe Lieberman obviously has a grudge against liberals, et cetera, so they made some good points. But then get a load of what Ann Kornblut from Washington Post says here, and then at the end they make another interesting comment. So let's watch those real quick. Clip number 3.
It's one thing, Ian, to be really tough and to make the Democrats do what, you know, basically say, heel, dog, heel, and get the Democrats to do this bill the way he wants. Is he willing to bring down the House, to kill this bill right before Christmas and be the guy who does it? Is he willing to do that, dude?
I mean, look, we didn't think that he would do what he did in the Connecticut race, and he did. He's shown nothing but political courage, if you want, a willingness to buck the party all the way through. I wouldn't put it, really wouldn't surprise me actually all that much
what a
if he
story
did.
this is.
I will say that, you know, this is expanding now beyond just Democrats yelling at him in the caucus meeting. I mean, you've got liberal bloggers and even some Democrats, again, saying that they don't want him, especially if he kills this, to be the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. There's been a call today for his wife to no longer be a global ambassador for the Susan G. Komen Cure for Breast Cancer Foundation, which they've said wouldn't be. So I think this thing is expanding, but you cannot, I don't think, overstate the level of anger
those are the same. By the way, those are the same blogs who were out after him in 2006.
That's exactly right.
And
so this is a continuing fight, and it's going to end up being more than Lieberman. I don't think Joe Lieberman would like to be as egotistical as he sometimes can be or seem. I don't think he wants to do this alone. I think if it happens, he sure as heck would like to have Ben Nelson and maybe a couple of
Any chance this will lead to reconciliation of the...
First of all, I don't think that the deal is over with yet. Despite all the yelling and screaming now, it's still possible.
I think they might...
They're holding reconciliation background. They don't want to mention it. Harry Reid doesn't want to mention it because the moment he mentions or doesn't react negatively to the idea of reconciliation, everybody will immediately interpret that for what it is.
The left will want it, That he's saying okay to it.
I would say that's all
That is really Armageddon.
Right.
All right, let's understand some things. So at the end there, let me address that first. If we go to reconciliation, that's Armageddon. What's so Armageddon about it? Bush used it all the time. Bush used it for the largest tax cuts in U.S. history. And did Armageddon happen? No. The Democrats went, and it passed. There was no Armageddon. Now if the Democrats go to it, Armageddon! And did you hear Ann over there? Well, Matthew said Joe Lieberman was strong, and then Kornblut said that he showed political courage and bucking the party. Well, yeah, it rhymes with bucking the party, okay, but I wouldn't have gone with that. Courage under fire. That's what Lieberman has, if you listen to the mainstream media. And earlier in the program, they said, yeah, Howard Feynman said basically Lieberman was pissed at Marcos Melitsas from Daily Coast and basically Jane Hampshire from Fire Dog Lake. And that's why he snapped out at them and decided to kill meaningful reform because of that kind of courage. Wow, that is courageous. And finally, by the way, I just want to give a quick note. That little I'm against the clip, I found it on discourse.net, and I thought it was great, and I want to give him credit for that. All right, we're going to come right back. Young Turks. Back on the Young Turks. Now, we move from healthcare to the issue of the deficits. We're going to welcome back Bruce Bartlett. He's worked on the Reagan administration, wrote Reaganomics, Supply Side Economics in Action, but then later also wrote The New American Economy, The Failure of Reaganomics, and a New Way Forward. Bruce, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Happy to be here.
Bruce, I want to talk to you about the current state of the deficit and who's responsible for it. First off, how big a deficit do we have right now?
About $1.4 trillion, close to 10% of the GDP.
So $1.4 trillion. And that is for the year of 2009, but by the time it's over, we estimate that it's going to be about a $1.4 trillion deficit? Is
well,
that
we've
right?
actually finished fiscal year 2009. That ended on September 30.
Right.
And it was we had a deficit of about $1.4 trillion. And I believe that we're also estimating a deficit of the same amount for this coming year, fiscal year 2010, which we're already in.
Okay, so it's 1.4 for both years, 09 and
approximately,
and
yeah,
the estimated of 2010. Okay, so now 2009, a lot of that obviously, given that it ends, the calendar year for that ends in September 30th, was during the Bush administration. Is that right?
Well, that's right. The fiscal 2009 budget was put forward originally by President Bush in January of 2008. And the budget President Obama puts forward in next month will be for fiscal year 2011. So we're always, a year or so ahead of ourselves.
Right. So where did that, let's talk about 09 that ended. How does that 1.4 trillion break down? What are the different large numbers behind that?
Oh, gee, I'd have to look it up. I don't have that off the top of my head. But you can't really divide up the deficit and say so much is due to spending and so much is due to lower revenues. It's kind of hard to do that.
Well, did the stimulus go, I'm sorry, before we get to the stimulus, did the bailout go in 09 calculations or the 2010 calculations? Where does the bailout go?
Well, the bailout is largely in 2009. That legislation was passed in December, just about a year ago, and so, but not all of the budgetary spending, occurred last year. Some of it's still going on, and some will still go on, next year.
Mm-hmm. So now you say that when Obama, I read your article in Daily Beast, and of course you write for other publications as well. So you say about $1.2 trillion of that deficit was before Obama took office. Well, why is that?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office in January of this year estimated that we would have a deficit of $1.2 trillion in fiscal year 2009. So that was before Obama took office and didn't take into account any of the policies he enacted. And if you go through the CBO's calculations, you see that a lot of the increase in the deficit from 1.2 to 1.4 was due to poorer economic conditions than anticipated, which automatically reduced revenues. So we would probably have had a deficit of $1.3 trillion last year even if John McCain had been elected and done nothing in terms of stimulus, which I think is not likely.
Okay, so you're saying at most 0.2 trillion goes to Obama, but given economic worsening, you're not even entirely sure that that's the case. How about, that's for 2009, how about for 2010, the projected deficit? Well, can we say, well, look, that's the stimulus spending of Obama, et cetera? How much of that is he responsible for?
Well, certainly a great deal more of it, but keep in mind that the largest factor leading to a higher deficit is that federal revenues are now at one of the lowest levels they've been in since World War II. In fiscal year 2009, federal revenues were 14.9% of GDP. The post-war average is over 18%. So something like 4% of GDP revenues have fallen by about 4% of GDP. So that accounts for, something like 40% or so of the deficit, and the rest is not entirely due to stimulus spending, because spending for things like unemployment insurance and welfare and stuff like that also goes up automatically, even if we don't enact any new programs. So the stimulus will certainly have some more of an impact on the deficit in the current fiscal year, but certainly not. I mean, it's not as if the budget would be balanced if we just hadn't elected Obama.
Right. So before I get back to that, let me just finish up with 2011, okay? Because now I want to go one more year, and now we're getting, of course, as we go along, we get more speculative because these are just projections of what's going to happen. But given that we hope there won't be more stimulus spending at that point, we hope that revenues have picked back up a little bit by that point. Do we get to better deficit numbers at that point?
Yeah, I don't have the current projections in front of me. They're very easily found at cbo.gov and budget.gov and places like that. But the administration's assumption is that the bulk of the stimulus was one-time spending that would be not become a permanent part of the budget. And so when those programs are finished doing whatever they do, then we'll get back to normal. But the thing is that normal is still very bad. So we're looking at deficits in 5 or 6% of GDP range, as far as the eye can see, and that's at least twice as much as I think most budget experts think it ought to be.
Mm-hmm. And does the different accounting on the wars make a difference in how we calculate the deficit these days?
Well, I mean, the wars do contribute to the deficit.
They used to have them out of the budget. Now it seems like they're in the budget, but I'm not positive about that. Do you
Yeah. I mean, we've spent about $1 trillion on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan up until now, and if memory serves, we're projecting something like that same amount of money going over the next 10 years or so. So wars are definitely very expensive, and they do add to the defense budget, which is a big part of the budget.
All right, now, and we're talking to Bruce Bartlett here. He writes for Forbes magazine, and his own website is capitalgainsandgames.com, and of course his book is The New American Economy. So finally, let's go back to the issue of who is responsible for the deficits at this point. So when people scream bloody murder that Obama came in and all of a sudden government exploded, it's kind of an illusion in a sense, because the CBO had already said, Congressional Budget Office, that as soon as he was coming in, he had a $1.2 trillion deficit.
That's right, and of course, I mean it's very difficult to account for spending. I mean, are we supposed to talk about things like Social Security and Medicare that were enacted, generations ago, that have a very substantial amount of spending that adds to the deficit? I mean, that doesn't. I don't know if that makes sense. So all we can kind of do is look at the short-run situation, and in the short run, the biggest addition to the deficit is the decline in the economy. But we've also had, under President Bush, a huge number of tax cuts, big increases in spending for Medicare Part D. That was a new program that will cost $1 trillion over the next 10 years. plus plus the wars and a lot of pork barrel spending and things like that. So certainly a great deal of the problems, budgetary problems that President Obama has to deal with, are things that he inherited. And of course, he is adding to those things as well with the stimulus and health reform and various other things. But I think it's just, I get tired of hearing Republicans talk as if the budget would be balanced and the economy would be booming if we just hadn't elected Obama, which is just ludicrous.
All right, there you have it. Bruce Bartlett, author of The New American Economy, The Failure of Reaganomics, and a New Way Forward. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. We'll be right back.